Okay, this will be a running video of Mr. Oldacre leading our data session, and I'm going to leave the video up here focused on his projected computer screen.
All right, so what we're doing on this is we're going to print all of our student scores. Okay, so you can go in and go through your Eduphoria and print all those. So we're going to go down to this person. This first student is Damien Aguilar. I'm going to go look at his score, and his score was like a 55. Did he achieve our growth? No. Jose, he had see, he had 65%. Oh, he just missed it by 1. Chase did not achieve it. Aiden Austin, his goal was 69. He got an 85. So yes, he would achieve a growth. Okay, and all we'll do then is write down the number that we have, and that's the amount of students. So if we had 10 students, I've used a computer, 10 students there, we would go 10 divided by our total 93. That gives us our percent. Okay?
And we're only doing this based on our classes, and then
That's
we can
it.
compare ours
Correct.
together.
So what we'll end up doing is we're going to have, this is mine, and you'll have yours, because you're going to have this report right here for you. And this is where we're going to get all of our information. This is we had one student with a 45 on our Asian. So our Asian, we don't have on there. Let's go with Black American. One had a 70. One, what's their percent? 70. Their goal was
50%.
50%. Okay?
So that
that's it.
exceeds.
It did.
Which is great.
Good. Okay? So that's how we're filling that out. So let's just, I'll start inputting some data. We'll see what it looks like. All right. I had 93 students. The Mount Satisfactory was 31%. So we rounded to give it at 31, so you can do your 31% there. And then you just have to multiply with your calculator to figure out how many that would be.
31% times not your total of 93.
There you go. 0.31 times 93. So I had 28.83, so we round that to 29. So we had 29 students. Now we go to our eco.
And you have more students than I do because you have the advanced math class, and my STAR class does not take, they're not in my data.
That's right. So because they're not going to be tested, so you have a lower amount. So we're looking at.
And maybe we should back up and talk about what platform we're using for data on Edgenuity.
Eduphoria, yes. Our Eduphoria has numerous data. It has our student scores, category breakdown, individual responses. We analyze each test item for the SE. There's multiple uses of data here. We could have our SE by question, 1% we were doing. Let's see. This is the great tool we'll be talking about in just a minute. This is kind of showing us, like on question number 1, A is your correct answer, but we had 10% choose B, 13%, and 10. We're going over to our next question. There was a big disparity. 51% got it right, but we had 2 questions that had over 20%. And so that's what we'll have to document. We'll look at and say, how come? And in this case, on number 2, it was very lazy, okay? We were talking about 1 3/8, and they just used the number. So this was a very lazy one, if I remember that.
Right,
And that's
because
what
if
we're.
they used their benchmark percent, then they knew the right
That's
answer.
it, okay? All right. So there's multiple data information on every test. And there's a lot of new things that they're adding right now that there is nothing like star growth, there's nothing. So there's some things that they're slowly getting in the process of adding to the information that we're getting. So there's that. Let's go back to the teacher. You see, this has your individual scores for all of them in alphabetical order. Or we have that luxury of per class. We can go over here to a common unit assessment, mathematics, 2018. And this will break it up just per grade level. Okay. We also, which is a very good thing that I like to use too, is by teacher and section. Okay. Which we should have more data than that. What it will do is break up your classes. Okay?
Okay.
Gives you your first, your third, and your sixth.
That would be really helpful to compare.
That's why I have to go back to all students. I go to all students and do that, and it'll do it for you. Like when we go to the all students category over here, all students, common unit, 2019. And now then I can go over set for my teacher section. And there you go. See, it has your scores on each one. See, first period is 48, then we have a 55 and 54, and then they keep your advanced separated. But see, it's first period struggles. And it's something to do, and that's why I keep the chart over there on that wall, to see if it's a continuing thing, on the wall over there.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. That makes a lot of sense.
It's competition. Makes them a little bit more competitive. So we're working those back to that form there, getting all that information from that. Let's go on down. Let's go to the next section here where let's find any readiness ticks that were successful for 80%. So let's go look at that. And we're going to find our strongest and weakest. So that's our I did not have an 80. The highest I had was a 6.4 F.
And what teak is that?
I China based.
Oh, because it was from last week.
Yes, that's what did you to it there.
6.4 F.
Oh, it's right here. It's our benchmark fractions.
Yes.
And the thing too, we'll realize as we're seeing this, sometimes we only may have 2 questions here and 5 questions on this one. And
There were about 6 benchmark fraction questions
Yes.
on the test.
And that's why I say when we're designing those tests, how we weigh that readiness take to make it fair. Because it's been to that point we've had it where only 1 question here. Well, if most of them missed it,
Are you under all students on this? I'm
yes,
gonna pull my
all
data
students.
up,
All
so
students, yes.
all students.
And go to find your strongest and weakest, step 1 over there. Drop it down.
I did not have any over 80% either.
Okay.
But 6.4 F, I had 75.98%.
There you go. So that, we can think about, okay,
So that would be that's my strongest one.
so that's what we're saying, hey.
And I feel good about that because I hounded them on benchmark fractions. And so that means my lowest one is 6.5C.
Us too. So we had this, we're at the same point, so there's something, whatever, and it's something that we're gonna say, okay, was it math book? Was it something we need to add to it? And so that's just using equivalent fractions.
Yours was about 10% higher than mine. And that makes, I'm going equivalent fractions, I'm not surprised because they're still struggling with just the idea of it. They know how to do it, but when presented with it in a problem, that's where they're struggling.
And that's what we were talking about when we went over the test today. And even when we go back over the test, they're going, oh, I get it now. And the way I looked at it, is, on the test for me, I compared everything to 50%. And we could have really cut back on a lot of things, so. But see, we'll have that. That's a pretty strong take. Using equivalent fractions, all that, so we'll see a lot more.
Which is good, because I feel that with more practice, they might get better at it, because that was actually one of the last things we did in 9.3, and then we moved right into rational
Yes.
numbers, so.
So that's fine, we're on the same page, that's cool. That's, I'm not saying this, but it is that we're saying, okay, so that's something that we need to, can we refine our math book? Do we increase motivational math? May do that, whatever.
I think that's gonna be a huge key.
I think
My
so,
percent
too.
on 6.4E was a little bit higher, 7
Yes.
or 8%. And I went back and retaught just setting up proportions and cross multiplying each side and solving for our unknown quantity.
Yes.
And I think that was a huge help.
Yes.
I should have done that from the beginning. So maybe going back and filling in some of those gaps.
Yes, I agree, I got you.
Okay, what should we look at next?
Let's look at, so we didn't have that 60% or below did not meet, so that's what we would look back on that same report we were just looking at. Just on our readiness, okay, so we would pick our readiness that were below 60, and that's going to be 2 of those, and what we would go back to.
So that doesn't include any of our supporting standards.
Go readiness only.
Okay.
Okay, so that's what I'm saying. That's what a lot of people hated this, because they didn't read. They were filling everything, oh man, so they would look at that data and say, I gotta fill out 4 deals, and it's not right. All they want is readiness, because that's guaranteed testing, okay?
Sure,
So
okay.
we'll have 2, and we're going to write down just kind of put the tick in keywords, the percent, okay? So it's 56 and our 53s, we'll do that. Next, we'll go down to the bottom of that. And that's where we go back to our unit, the assessment right here. So our next thing, for me, I would have to write down question number 2, and I'd put a G and a J. So the first thing I'd do right here, I'm gonna do 2, G, and /J, okay? Then I'm gonna look at that, and we'll go to question number 2. Let's see, what was going on with question number 2? The 44%.
And they were choosing 44% because they didn't read the question
Because of
and
the do
no,
not.
it was do not.
That's it. So we're gonna write down, that was not fully reading the question, okay? All right, so we go with our next one, that would be our tick that we put down, would be, our uptick would be stuff here is for you. 6.48, pardon me, 6.48. Next one is not any there. None. Then I have only number 6.
But do we need to look at number 2 since it's a supporting standard, just because we know that they need it?
I do every question, okay? Especially on that part, because just them understanding how to read these questions and everything else. So I just do them all. I don't care if it is a supporting or ratings. So number 6 would be our next one. 6, they chose G. And number 6 was similar to number 2. The 125 out of 500, and we
Same
need to do
thing.
the other. Okay, so we had 2 errors just for the reading. Number 7, I have A and C. That's when we're changing.
The majority of mine picked A. I had 35% pick A, 27 or 28% pick D, 26% pick B. They were kind of all over the map in my class.
So we can look at their tests this way. I have it up here. Because on number 7, you kind of understand what they're thinking. You know what I'm saying, by picking A. Because they're looking at this 6.25%, and they're thinking, hey, that's 6 1/4,
Yes.
and they get this. So you kind of have to respect that a little bit.
Sure.
That's not a bad answer to me. Now, when we get down to thinking about, because this is the way this is a percent.
But they could have eliminated A if they would have done percent to decimal first.
That's it, so we're
Which is
changing.
what I tell all my
Right.
kids to do.
That's what I say. We're
But
going-
most of mine picked B because they just saw 6 and 25 again.
Exactly.
And on this one, this is a hard question for my non-math brain because I'm not going to try and reduce 6 1/4 over 100. I'm going to narrow my answers down and then go and divide my fractions that I have left over.
And this is the way this is me telling them. I'm thinking right here, because we've already omitted these 2 by just changing it to a decimal. So you're down to these 2, okay? I'm thinking that is 6 cents of a dollar, okay?
Okay?
That's not much money. It's very, very little. So which one is my smallest fraction, you know what I'm saying? And just, divide the 6 into a dollar,
Mhm.
you'll get about 16 cents. That's what I look at. I'm looking at, when I see the decimal, I think money, 6 cents. Man, that's small, okay?
And that's helpful. That seems to relate to them, so I need to try and incorporate that.
Just try it. I always try to
Money.
get the money, okay? The next one for me. All right, 8 was okay. Number 9. Hey. Let's see what that was. I can't think of why they would pick that.
I had 22% pick it.
Did you really? Okay.
40% picked the right answer.
The only way I can think of is that they were really happy with themselves by getting this. And there's 2 of them. And they just did this. And the thing, that's the toughest part, is 160% is more than one whole. So it's like $1.60. So it had to be an improper.
Mhm.
And that was their choice, so.
And I think that maybe some of mine were going, well, it can't be an improper fraction.
You're right.
And I'm going, well, you had one to start with, because they're
Yes.
forgetting 160% is 160 over 100.
That's it. You're right. Let's look at this one. One number 10, it's a griddable, so there's nothing to do. You know what I'm saying? If you're gonna have more than 20% miss it, there's nothing to
Right.
The toughest part for me on the gridable was the common sense.
Yeah, I did mine, so is the NC on here not correct?
Yes. See, well, I only had,
I had 55% not correct, 38%,
I had 24% correct, 73 not.
and then 6%, I don't know what happened.
And this is the thing. I had several. Do this. And I told him, I said, let's use our common sense. That person coming through the door is 0.3 of a person. That means a leg's missing or whatever. I said, we gotta use our common sense. I said, because this breaks our heart, because the answer was this.
You had the math right, but you put it in the wrong place.
And so that's a gridable thing, but at the same point in time,
The hurdle too is getting these kids to read
It
and
is.
understand.
common sense.
Think
You're right.
about, make a connection with what this number is. What is
Yes.
34? It is the number of members who go on Saturday.
Yes. So that was,
Still haven't figured out how to bridge that gap.
and I think that's our gridables will be after Christmas, okay? But that's why we gotta have it on every test. You remember us talking about that? Keep a gridable on every test we do. Okay? All right. Let's try, what else is that? Number 12, 9, 13. My 13 was spread out like crazy.
I had 42% choose A, 48% choose C, and then B and D were low.
Okay, so you, on what number was that? Number 12, 13?
13.
Okay, 13. Let's look at 13 here. A lot choose B.
You had a lot choose the correct answer.
This is the way we were talking about that one. And this is me. We're gonna talk about rode the bus home. Was 17, so we had 17 out of 25. This is me. I compare everything to 50%. And so what's after $25 is 12, so this is greater than 50%. Okay? But we need to figure out what did that represent. That was rode the bus. So I'm gonna look for something that's bigger than 50% and rode the bus. That works. No, 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 I'm through. That's just me.
One of the things that I want them to do, and let me know what you think about this, the answer choices are percent. When I have them see a percent sign, I want them to take that number and put it over 100.
Exactly
every
right.
single time,
Exactly
because
right.
a lot of them were thinking, oh, 17%, 18%. I'm going, no, it can't be 17% because that's not over
Sure.
100.
You're right.
And so, I don't know where that disconnect is coming from,
And
because
this is-
every time we do the same.
And this is the word, this is the way for me. If I have, you see these words in the question, they underline it, and we go, what is something I don't know, and that's 100. And that's it. And then they're going to set up,
The rest of it.
that's it. Cross multiply, do it. Because they could have done this two ways. Multiply by 4,
Sure.
and here we go, or the other way.
I always tell my kids, for me, if it's like money in quarters, go ahead and do it that way.